Go ahead. Well, welcome to the November 9th meeting of the Board of the Dormitory Authority, State of New York. It's a pleasure to have everybody here. We're in 3 different locations, and Sarah's going to call the roll and make note for the record of the locations of the members.
Okay, good morning, everyone, to the November 9th DASNY board meeting. In our New York City office, we have for board members our chair, Al Carney, our vice chair, Jerry Romsky, also Beryl Snyder, Wellington Chen, and Lisa Gomez. In our Buffalo office, Janice McKinney is with us, and we're expecting John Gardner. In our Albany office, Joan Sullivan, Ken Evans, and Adrian Swazerski, and Phyllis Morris has let us know that she will not be here at today's meeting. For staff members in New York, I'll just go through the list for all 3 offices, since we don't need to note location for the record when we're on video conference. Of staff, Reuben McDaniel, Paul Koopman, Nadine Fontaine, Kim Ellis, Portia Lee, Steve Curro, Ricardo Salomon, Jenna Flinton will be in New York if she's not there yet, Dina Amodio, Deb Fasser, Matt Bergen, Karen Ellinger, Alex Sardine is here, and Amanda Nazario from outside counsel firm, and Craig Schreivogel. Sorry, Craig. We have Chris Reitzel, Seth Bryant, and Sonny Williams. And that is it, Mr. Chair. I'll turn it back to you.
Sarah, thank you. We'll get straight to the agenda. The first item of business is the review and, if appropriate, approval of the minutes of the October 12th meeting. All the members have had an opportunity to see those minutes. Are there any questions, proposed revisions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes? Well, thank you, Wellington. Is there a second?
I'll
Thank
second.
you very much, Lisa. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Does anybody want to take a pass? Are there any abstentions? All right, so the minutes, the resolution to approve the minutes is approved unanimously. Thank you. The second order of business involves the audit committee report. Committee met yesterday, and in the absence of the chairman for the moment, I've asked Joan Sullivan to give us the quick summary of yesterday's meeting.
Sure. Thank you, Al. Yesterday we met, we approved the minutes from June 21st. We also had our kickoff audit meeting with KPMG. They did a presentation on their objectives, their plans, and their timeframes for the upcoming audit. We had our internal audit. We went to executive session. We had an internal audit report. We went into executive session, and we decided after executive session at this moment not to approve or disapprove the audit committee charter or the internal audit charter. And that is report. Does anyone have any questions?
The changes to the charter, just to
Changes,
clarify,
excuse me, the
changes to
change,
the charter. So
the
the
update.
charters have not changed from their past version.
And
All right.
that is my report. Thank you, Al.
No, Joan, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Finance Committee report. Mr. Romsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met yesterday afternoon in the various offices. We adopted the meeting minutes from the October 11th meeting of the Finance Committee. And then we discussed one offering, which was the sales PIT bond offering that's on today's calendar. And after some discussion and after confirming that it was in compliance with the state's bond cap, we recommend that be adopted at today's board meeting. And unless anyone has any questions or concerns, that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry, too, for confirming that we remain below the cap. It's good to have in the board meeting minutes. Are there any questions for Jerry? Hearing none, the next agenda item is a single approval resolution. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind tab 4, you will see a sales tax transaction summary. Matt Berger of DASNY will be presenting with Chris Reitzel of Nixon Peabody and Sonny Williams of Bryant Rubino. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. The board is being asked to authorize the issuance of multiple series of tax-exempt and/or taxable fixed and variable rate bonds issued at one or more times in an amount not to exceed $2.75 billion with a term of 30 years. The state would like the flexibility to issue the proposed bonds under either the personal income tax revenue bond program and/or the sales tax revenue bond program. The authorization is for both new money and refunding purposes, and the new money portion is estimated at $1.3 billion and may include the funding or reimbursement related to capital projects for the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, funding for economic development projects and grants, funding for various environmental initiatives, funding for healthcare grants, libraries and other SED programs, capital projects for the Office of Mental Health, the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, and the Office of Addiction Services and Supports, as well as state and municipal facilities grants, which are also known as SAM grants. In addition to the new money portion, the authorization also looks to cover the refunding of certain bonds issued under various state-supported debt programs in the amount of approximately $1.13 billion. Under the security features, both the personal income tax revenue bond program and the sales tax revenue bond program are secured by semi-annual payments to be made pursuant to financing agreements between DASNY and the Division of the Budget. For the personal income tax program, the security also includes 50% of the receipts from the New York State personal income tax, 50% of the employer compensation expense tax, and 50% of the receipts from the pass-through entity tax, which are all deposited into the revenue bond tax fund. For the sales tax revenue bond program, security also includes the set aside of 2 cents or 50% of the state's 4% sales tax pursuant to statute and deposited in the sales tax revenue bond tax fund. When looking at the projected debt service coverage ratios for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023, the debt service coverage on all outstanding state personal income tax bonds is projected to be 6.4 times total debt service, and the debt service coverage on all outstanding sales tax bonds is projected to be 6.1 times total debt service. And finally, the expected ratings under either program are AA1, AA+, and AA+. And Mr. Chairman, now I would like to hand the presentation over to Chris and Sonny.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt, and good morning, everyone. Very grateful to be here with all of you today, as always. Before you for consideration is the adoption of 2 supplemental resolutions, one under the personal income tax revenue bond program and the other under the state sales tax revenue bond program. Each supplemental resolution authorizes individually and together the issuance of up to $2.75 billion of authorized bonds, which means that in no event will more than that be issued under the supplemental resolutions before you today. In order to provide maximum flexibility, it is proposed that the board authorize the issuance of bonds under both the general purpose PIT bond resolution and the sales tax bond resolution. As described in our letter, the authorized bonds may be issued for any authorized purpose or expected to pay for the projects described in our letter and as Matt just went through earlier, and to refund certain outstanding state-supported debt. Each supplemental resolution permits authorized bonds to be issued in one or more series or subseries at one or more times and to be sold on a negotiated basis or through competitive bidding. In addition, all or a portion of the authorized bonds may be issued as tax-exempt bonds and/or federally taxable bonds. Each supplemental resolution also provides for an authorized officer to execute and deliver supplements to the related financing agreement to reflect any additional issuance under that program. Each supplemental resolution also delegates to various officers of the authority the power to make the determinations described in our letter and to do all things necessary or convenient in connection with the sale and issuance of the authorized bonds. And at this point, I want to turn things over to Sonny to discuss the 2 financing programs in greater detail.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all again. As Chris said, I'm just going to give a brief overview of both the PIT and sales tax programs. With regards to the PIT program, Article 5C of the state finance law authorizes the authority and certain other authorized issuers to issue PIT bonds for any authorized purpose. All PIT bonds issued under the general purpose PIT bond resolution are special obligations of the authority secured by payments to be received by the authority under the PIT financing agreement with DOB. The PIT financing agreement obligates the state to pay debt service on outstanding PIT bonds, notes, and other obligations. Those payments are made from amounts available in the Revenue Bond Tax Fund established by state finance law and are subject to annual appropriation. The Revenue Bond Tax Fund receives statutorily allocated portions of the state's personal income tax receipts, the Employer Compensation Expense Program receipts, and the pass-through entity tax receipts. With regards to the sales tax program, Article 5F of the New York State Finance Law authorizes the authority and certain other authorized issuers to issue sales tax bonds for any of the purposes for which state-supported debt may or has been issued. All sales tax bonds issued under the sales tax bond resolution are special obligations of the authority secured by payments to be received by the authority under the sales tax financing agreement with DOB. The sales tax financing agreement obligates the state to pay debt service on all outstanding sales tax bonds issued under the sales tax bond resolution. Those payments are made from amounts available in the Sales Tax Revenue Bond Tax Fund established by state finance law and are subject to appropriation. The Sales Tax Revenue Bond Tax Fund receives a statutorily allocated percentage of the revenues collected from the state's sales and compensating use taxes. At this point, we will turn it back over to Mr. Chairman, but we're happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sonny. Thanks, Chris. And of course, thank you, Matt. I see that Seth is there, is on the screen. Am I right about that?
You are correct, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Seth, it's always a pleasure to have you join us. Thank you for being here.
Well, pleasure to be here.
All right.
And we're delighted to be able to present about this potential bond offering subject to the board's approval. So thank you. And thank you to the board members.
We're about to work on that.
Absolutely.
Are there questions for Sonny, Chris, or Matt? Matt, I guess I have a question, and it's really one of labels and nomenclature. I'm assuming that all of the agencies that are listed in the 8 bullet pointed description of purposes are all state agencies. For example, the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services is not the federal Department of Homeland Security, but is the state's division. Am I correct about that?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And the same is true for all the other, where we're talking about the Department of State. We're talking about the state's Department of State.
Correct, New York State. Correct.
Okay, terrific. Are there questions for any of the presenters? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve this sizable transaction?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you very much, Beryl. Is there a second?
Second. Adrian.
Quickly, all in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? So this transaction, the resolution to forward this transaction is passed unanimously. The transaction is approved. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, your report is the next item on the.
Yes,
on
it
the
is, sir.
agenda. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. Waiting for you. First and foremost, I just want to congratulate our governor and lieutenant governor for their victory last night. I had a chance to go down to the event, and it was wonderful to be in that space. Also great to get the tension of elections behind us and moving on to on to good business, but
Praise
yeah,
God.
I'm really glad that she won. She was in great spirits, and both she and Lieutenant Governor did a fantastic job of campaigning, particularly the last 10 days, brought it home, and everyone was very delighted at that victory. So great to have that behind us. And again, just a wonderful night. Just want to congratulate them, the great work they've done for the state of New York. Second, we talked a little bit over a couple of years, probably 3 or 4 years, about Wadsworth Laboratory.
Yes.
This is a potential consolidated lab of some of our current outdated facilities. And I had the opportunity to tour our old labs with Head of State Ops, Catherine Garcia, and the Director of the Division of Health, Dr. Mary Bassett. So we spent some time there. Funny, one of the buildings is one that DASNY financed 30 years ago. That is now fairly obsolete. But one of the things that the tour did show all of us is that these older buildings have so many columns and dividers, you can't get some new equipment in there comfortably, as well as just having a consolidated space where everyone work together. And you may know, but New York's one of the leading states in the country. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of work for the CDC with their lab work. Former Nobel Prize winner came out of New York State labs and have a great consolidation between research and clinical. So we've done some work on that. We had a $750 million budget. We recognized after inflation and time that wasn't enough. So the governor and others are looking at increasing that budget to give us the go ahead to begin design on a consolidated lab. So that has been kicking off, and Steve may mention that a little bit later. But again, it was great to see the facilities and really bring home the need for this new consolidated lab.
They agreed on I know there was some reduced scale because of the pricing escalations. They tried to do it the first time, they couldn't sort of get it done. They agreed on sort of what they're really looking to actually.
Scope
build now?
what, size and scope.
Right.
Yeah, so we looked at the $750 million size and scope. It wasn't enough. They're looking at adding another several hundred million. I'm not sure what the quite number is. They've asked to go back and redesign and add some other pieces to it. So the scope will be in the $1 billion mark probably, and will include all the critical components they want to be consolidated. Not everything will be consolidated, and there's some talk about designing a second phase and third phase. This first phase will put together all the critical lab components that the state wanted and could not achieve in the first go around because of inflation and other issues.
What's the typical timeline for design permitting? Like when you budget here, sorry, when you budget us and you scope out this, obviously we're going to go into some cycle at some point. How long does it usually take to get through the design development and out for bid? Thinking about the financing climate and, where interest rates are right now and construction pricing, supply chain stuff is still squeezed. Like it's possible that by the time we're ready to build this thing, the world may have moved, possibly favorably, possibly not, but moved. So,
And that's what happened the first time. They
were
went to a point, and then it
Right.
moved past them. Now
right, but it may move back the other way. I mean,
Right, it could.
that's sort of what we're seeing in our space is that price, people, as interest rates have gone up, there's less construction, people are hungrier. So pricing's starting to get a little more competitive. So how do you all think about that?
Steve wants to answer that.
Sure. So this is not the traditional design bid build project. This is design build. So we are working right now at locking in the design build price. So
So you're buying at the height of the market in terms
Well,
of financing and.
we're not
costs.
quite there with the design, the program. But we're hoping to get back from the design builder their concept for the $700 million spend, $50 million spend in the middle of November. The nice thing about design build is you have price certainty, right out of the gates. So, we sign a contract with the builder, who is the designer, and we lock that down. The nice thing about the infusion of a couple of extra dollars here is that it does pull in another lab space and it allows us to do a little more consolidating. If it was a traditional design bid build, it would probably take, after programming is done, I would guess 18 to 24 months to design. And then we would be into a 3 to 6 month bid and award period. So you're talking, a year and a half to 2.5 years out before we actually put a shovel in the ground. under the traditional method. Design build, we can be building while we're still designing. We just got to get to a place where everybody's comfortable, we have a program, we have a price. and we're
They
ready
did
to
an
roll.
additional RFP on this, right?
And how do you think about, like, when you, from a procurement, I know we had a lot of talk about procurement at the last meeting, but how do you think about sort of procurement methodology, like design bid build versus design build?
It really depends on the project. We do the dorm work, which is really repetitive, 200 spaces that are exactly the same. A lot of that work can be pre-manufactured off-site. That's ripe for design build. Renovation projects, not so much. Those are tough from a design standpoint. You really got to understand the existing conditions. You got to get in there, get your hands dirty, design it up, and then, hope that unforeseen conditions don't pop up all over the place once you go into construction. So to answer your question, it's really a function of what the
So
project is.
the project and the scope determine it, not the buying climate.
The project and the scope certainly point us in a preferred direction. The climate you got to take into account as well. Absolutely. But, when that aside, all things being equal, you're really looking at the project and what you're trying to do. Yeah, the other thing about design build, which is nice, is that it's a qualifications-based selection for your builder. So we're not at the mercy of the bidding community. You might get a low bid contractor who isn't the greatest, and you don't know what your pricing is until you actually bid and award that project. Nice thing about design build is we pick them based on their qualifications, not their price.
But you lose your leverage in terms of pricing it, though.
We don't have to go with,
I'm just
we
trying
can
to
kind of-
learn how the
Yeah,
agency thinks about it.
If I selected your firm as a design builder, but we couldn't come to terms on price, well, I've got some others that I could go to.
Steve, just another point, just on the lab too, we are actually using a slightly modified design build process to progressive design build, which on a complex project allows us to evaluate as the design is continuing, changes in technology and so forth. So we're not locking the design, even in design build, we're not locking that builder in too early in the process. So it is a somewhat newer method in design build, but it's kind of a tweak to the process. And based on that type of project and talking to folks, we felt that was the best delivery method there for a sophisticated lab with changing technologies.
That makes sense, changing technologies, and I think, you're also going into what might be a favorable bidding or buying or procuring environment. And I assume this is upstate, I don't know what it was, but where's.
It's up in Hammond.
Okay, so it's probably not as sort of sensitive as the city is, to stuff like that. Thanks, sorry.
Other questions
Thanks,
on
Steve.
Wadsworth? Again, this is a big project for DAS. We're glad to have it and also glad to get this thing moving.
Our biggest.
Our biggest project. yeah.
Ever? Ever?
Yeah, the prior to this project, we did the labs up at City College. And they came in around 550, 600, something in that range. So we're going over $1 billion.
That's what we toured a couple of years ago.
Yes.
On the smaller project side, the Buffalo office transition, Janice is in our new Buffalo office that has transitioned well. I want to give you a quick update on our old Buffalo office. We went out for a bid, we had several bids, and we are now in contract to sell the old building, which is more of a house than a building, quite candidly, at a reasonable price. Our real properties folks are working through that transaction. Our hope is in the next 60 days that will be off of our books and we will be fully transitioned into the new Buffalo office. So we're pleased to get that moving and off, and always when you move into the new space, it's nice to get the old space decommissioned and out. We will be using some of those proceeds to offset the cost of the move into the new space. So on the move perspective, kind of break even, although obviously we'll be paying rent going forward starting in 2023. Any questions on Buffalo? I want to bring the board up to speed on where we are with the Office of Cannabis Management, do some updates on that. As you recall, a couple of months ago, we signed agreed to the limited partnership agreement. We're in the process now of finding locations. We have our design build firms selected. They will be announced shortly in public, but we're glad to have them on board. We've looked at quite a few locations. We're probably at 100 locations that we're evaluating, and our hope is to sign our first leases sometime in the next couple of weeks. We also have 3 agreements that relate from DASNY to the fund, which is our role with the fund. As you recall, this fund is a private fund. Their role is to help social equity applicants, licensees, get their buildings up and running so they get their businesses going. Our role is 3 parts. One is this lease agreement, identifying locations, negotiating leases, and signing on behalf of the fund, not on behalf of DASNY, those leases. The second is to build out those spaces. Those spaces are typically retail spaces from 2,500 to 4,000 square feet-ish. It's a fairly simple construction, but a good white box. Most of it's cabinetry and millwork. And so we are working with design build firms who've done this work in other parts of the country. So feel very good about that. So we have a construction management agreement that outlines the work our subsidiary will be doing on behalf of the fund. That's a very specific agreement. So that's something that, from a board perspective and others can look at and consider how to monitor going forward that agreement. And on an ongoing basis, we will be servicing the loans on behalf of the fund. And so we are finalizing a loan servicing agreement that outlines our specific task with that. So I just want to thank Jim Lapoli, Real Properties, done a great job. His team has been all over the state identifying properties and done a wonderful job. We've got some great locations. And I really feel very, very good about that. John Savona is heading up our construction division on this. He's taken that on. He's working with design build firms, others, getting our construction lined up and ready to go. They scoped out the design so that each facility will have very similar look and feel, although with different finishes and such, they won't look exactly alike. And then Kim Ellis, our chief financial officer, has been working on the loan servicing side. She's looking at some software to assist us with that. All of this, of course, is under the fund. We will be compensated for all the work we're doing from the fund. But those 3 agreements are going to guide our work specifically. We're not involved in any of the helping businesses get up and running, their inventory issues, all those. That's not as usual. We're simply in the construction role. So those 3 agreements will be available and will be able to be reviewed.
Who was that brokerage consultant on that?
CBRE. There was an article in the Cannabis Insider, which is an online cannabis paper, whatever, talking about potential conflicts with our fund managers. So I wanted to just give you some factual updates on what that actually is. So we've selected Siebert Williams Shank, partnered with Chris Weber and Lavetta Willis. Their firm is called Weber Willis, in a joint venture to be the fund managers. And one of the article implied that there was a conflict or potential conflict with some of the work they've done with cookies. So first, I want to give you some information. In the RFP itself, which I have here, I want to read to you that Weber and Willis did disclose that they are working with cookies on the foundation side. This comes straight from the RFP. Chris Weber and Jason Wild wants the Weber Wild Fund and Weber Wild Willis Foundation with over 20 million committed to date. The venture has allowed Willis to get to know many underrepresented in the space and assist them to navigate the often convoluted and ineffective social equity programs that exist in many states and cities. These experiences enabled her to develop a highly targeted and effective set of programs to assist social equity candidates. These insights led to the development of a curriculum in partnership with Cookies. Cookies is another cannabis brand that covers the gamut of skills necessary for success in the cannabis industry. So their 2 foundations partnered to help in other states, not in New York, social equity applicants understand the cannabis business. There's no financial arrangement or investment in those. They're partners in that, fully disclosed in their RFP. And one of the reasons we selected them was because of their ability to do this. Another issue that was failed to be mentioned in the article is in New York, we have a 2-tiered system. So anyone who sells brands cannot also own retail stores. So Cookies cannot open retail stores in New York because they want to sell brands in New York. So the work that Weber Willis is doing for the fund will not be in conflict with anything that Cookies do on their brand side. Finally, the article pointed out that Weber Willis in Michigan has a brand affiliate with some other folks. Matt Barnes, NBA player being one of them, called Players Only. And they are selling that brand in various outlets in Michigan, including cookie stores. Those are simple relationships like they would have in all of their relationships in Michigan. They also signed a no conflict agreement with DASNY, and part of their assignment and agreement with us in the limited partnership agreement was they would not have any conflicts that would cause them to have some conflicts of interest. So while the article tried to piece together some things that really aren't factually pieced together, when the RFP came in, the Office of Cannabis Management, Division of Budget, and DASNY were all in the selection committee. We all knew that they were working with with cookies on this, again, not-for-profit foundation work. And we also knew that they were in the cannabis business in other parts of the country, which was important to us when we selected them as fund manager. So I just want to clarify for board members, what we've done, where we are. Again, we
And they
don't.
can't sell it anyway, right? Because they're the distributor. That's what their
Correct.
business is. They sell it to whoever, and then they distribute it in the dispensary.
Correct. So from our perspective, we checked all the boxes early on conflicts. We don't have any reason to believe now there will be any conflicts. If there are, our agreements are that they have to disclose this to us, and we make the decision with those conflicts are ones that would prohibit them from either working for DASNY and or working for the conflicted.
And it was disclosed in the original response to the RFQ.
Yes, again, I'm looking at the RFP right now. I read from the RFP itself. So, yes.
And there's no commercial relationship even outside of New York yet anyway, between Players Only and Weber Willis.
There's no commercial investment relationship.
Okay.
The only relationship is Cookies own stores in Michigan, as do several other
And no
highways.
stores sell
No
Players
stores
Only.
sell Players Only. Yeah, okay. So that's the only, what I would call a commercial relationship. There's no investment relationship. So
Does Cookies manufacture this stuff in New York that they sell? I realize it's a completely independent question.
no, it's a good question. All legal cannabis sold in New York has to be grown in New York. Cookies does not have a license yet to grow New York cannabis. They plan to apply for that license, and I assume we will give them that
They'll
license.
market it, New York grown, right?
And they will do New York grown, and they will have, but it'll be their brand.
Turning a limitation into it.
And one of the things that you may have seen in the article is Cookies did open a retail merchandise store somewhere where they're selling Cookies merchandise, but not selling actual product because they cannot have a license to do that. But that's their,
In New York.
in New York. So that's their way of getting branding in the state. Again, they're not unique in that. There are several brands doing the exact same thing. Just want to give the board some comfort. You saw that article.
Thank you.
Just want to give you that.
Before you move on, let's ask, are there other members who have questions of Ruben about his description of the articles that were published recently? Any other board
This is
members? Go ahead, Joe.
This is Joan. I don't have questions, Ruben. This was very helpful for me, at least. I'm sure the other board members to understand what the actual issue was. Because certainly the article was, let's say, not complete. So I do appreciate you going through this. Thank you.
Yes, and I won't say on the record, but if you want to call me later, I'll tell you about the Cannabis Insider.
Thank you, sir.
Reading
Thank you.
Cannabis Monthly.
Moving on, you will be asked here in a moment to pass a resolution for a project labor agreement in Rochester. This is for the multi-phase project at Rochester Psych Center. We do these as routine matters, our labor relations and all that. So we will need to have that passed here in a moment. But before, any questions on the labor agreement? I don't want to do the resolution quite yet.
Okay.
Any
And no, I don't have any questions.
questions on the labor? Okay. Yeah, it's just standard business practice.
It follows the same format that we've used over the last couple of years. It's adjusted for the local labor union in Rochester.
We have a couple other PLAs we're negotiating over next few
That
months.
you're working on now?
Yep.
Okay.
Finally, before we take up that resolution, I am saddened to say that our Chief of Staff, Caroline Griffin, has found greener pastures and it will be leaving us at the end of November. Caroline has been a great partner at DASNY. She's done a lot of great work, and quite frankly, for me, the soft work she's done has been fantastic. She has a very great insight into what's going on. I call it a second floor whisper. It'll help them just understanding how things work. The governor's chamber. She's also done a great job of helping us facilitate all various relationships around the state. She's also really taken a real spearhead on the grant program. As you all know, we spent a lot of time over the last 3 to 4 years improving that program. And while Sarah and her team did the bulk of the work, Caroline organized that work and helped with that. And she was also invaluable in a lot of the work she did as chief of staff. So Caroline will be missed. We appreciate the work that she did. I personally appreciate the work that she did. And I really think that we all should wish her well in her new ventures. And I'm sure she will continue to be a good friend of DASNY and close to my cell phone, if not others.
May I add to that comment? I didn't have a chance to work with Caroline with any degree of intensity during the time that she was in the job. Caroline, if you're there, I don't know whether you are, can't see that far. Please know that every member of this board who had the opportunity to attend the recent Johnson function, which you organized and made happen. Jeffrey Gordon was there. Jeffrey Gordon implemented. He did what he needed to do, but he clearly had gotten good instruction from you. And the Johnson family, I spoke with John late last week. The Johnson family was very taken with the quality of the arrangements. And I told him that we had nothing to do with it. It was all you.
Yeah. But yes, Caroline has been a great, great partner at DASNY and will be missed. But when one door opens, when one door closes, another opens theme, Mr. Charlie Williams, who is, as of today, the Deputy Director of the Division of Budget, will be joining us December 1st as Managing Director and Executive Direction. Charlie was in the Division of Budget for 5 years. DASNY was part of his portfolio. The Office of Campus Management is part of his portfolio. And he will bring to us a lot of the second floor whispering that Caroline had, as well as great technical expertise around budget and finance and how we interplay. As again, board members know, Division of Budget and DASNY spent a lot of time working together on executing those things. Charlie's well regarded around the state, a steal for us. Portia called me as soon as she heard and said, wow, I can't believe you got this guy to come to DASNY. So he will be a great addition to us and fill not all of the gap that Caroline leaves, but certainly a good part of it. I also think that on the Office of Campus Management program, he'll help between the second floor and DASNY kind of facilitating some of that work. So we're very happy that Charlie will be coming on in December the 1st. He will be an officer. So at the December board meeting, we'll be asked to appoint him as an officer of the board. He will be assuming not only Caroline's functions, but also some other functions as well. So instead of being chief of staff, which really was kind of a misnomer for what Caroline did anyway, he'll be managing director of executive direction. So we'll be pleased to announce Charlie today publicly, but we'll have him at our next board meeting so you have a chance to meet him. I think that those of us who know the state, and he has been a great advocate for DASNY, quite frankly, over the last 4 to 5 years. He's really helped us get a lot of things through the Division of Budget. He knows us well, and I think he will be a wonderful addition to the DASNY team. So I just want everybody to know that we do have Mr. Williams coming on board, what's the superintendent of the Division of Budget, but that's the Division of Budget's problem, not our problem.
I agree.
With that, Mr. Chairman, resolution.
Is it my meeting again?
Resolution for PLAs.
Yeah, I know. It's behind tab 5. It's before we get to the finished form of the proposed PLA, the attachment A. The title of this is a resolution of the Dormitory Authority authorizing DASNY to include compliance with project labor agreement as a requirement in the project bidding documents in connection with the Rochester Psychiatric Center. Are there any questions about the resolution? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it? Somebody said something. Oh. Thank you, Wellington.
One second.
Thank you, Beryl, for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the resolution is approved and the project labor form is approved. Agreed. Thank you, Chair. We're going to go on to the financial report. Kim, that's behind tab 6, I believe. Yes. Have at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As highlighted in the standing financial report, our personnel expenses are continuing to be under projection, which is primarily due to retirements and slower than expected recruitments. Non-personnel expenses are also slightly under projection. We do not have any private debt issuance in the month of September, so our year-to-date financing fees remain at $1 million through September. Our percentage of direct hours charged to public client programs is at 95.6%. Budget staff are in the beginning stages of reviewing our year-end projections and working on developing next year's financial plan. So at next month's meeting, you'll see an update to the 22-23 budget and financial plan summary, which will include updated results for 21-22 and projections on where we expect to end this fiscal year 22-23. Next on the agenda, I believe, is the authorized investor resolution, which is presented for your consideration, which is an update to the list of employees authorized to approve and execute investment transactions, which reflects the addition of Natasha Fazone, who is a new hire in our investments unit.
That is the item, the next item, Kim, on the agenda. It's a one-page resolution. It precedes Exhibit A, a certificate from the Assistant Secretary with all the names on it. Are there any questions about the resolution? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it?
Joan, I make the motion.
Joan, thank you. Wellington, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? The resolution passes and it passes unanimously. Kim, I guess there's one other.
Yes, one last resolution for your consideration is for DASNY to enter into a contract with SS&C Technologies for a suite of software products that, among other things, will replace our current debt management system. The solution is a license-based model with annual maintenance hosted on premises. As outlined in my memo, our current system, APS2, reached its end of useful life in February with the system no longer supported. The contract is for a term of 5 years and includes 3 modules: DBC Debt Manager, which will replace the current tracking system for our outstanding debt; DBC Debt Manager Interface, which will be used in conjunction with Debt Manager to bring entries to our general ledger system; and DBC Finance, which is the industry standard for sizing and structuring municipal bond issues, which will be used by our finance group for optimization of new construction portfolios and public finance in connection with certain new bond deals. As noted, this suite of products, which integrates among each other, will eliminate several manual redundant processes and bring all data under one common system.
Thank you, Kim. It's the last item in the tab, and it precedes a draft agreement with SS&C. You all have had a chance to read the resolution. It's one paragraph. Are there any questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution? Sure. Thank you, Jerry. Second. Thank you very much, Lisa. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much.
Chairman, before you move on, I just wanted to say this specific software package is industry standard, which is fantastic. But our IS team is working to integrate all of our financial services systems so they work together. There's no manual inputs anymore and those types of things. So it really, between Kim and her group, Portia and her group, and our IS folks, they've done a great job of selecting the software that can then bring everything together in a way that really takes us to the next level. I'm just very proud of the team and what they have and continue to do. And this is another step in us enhancing our technology so that from a functionality perspective, we're up to speed. So I'm really thank you for the board approving this, it's really important to us to maintain the system. This is a great addition. We'll have some great efficiencies in the organization.
Let me ask a question. It's probably, far afield. When you combine systems like, and this is a question for Kim, but you may know the answer. When you combine systems like that, when you fit them together in ways that improve the overall efficiency, do you increase the cybersecurity risks?
Two things. Generally speaking, on a broad perspective, the answer is yes. I mean, we have another system that always adds cybersecurity risk to it.
Sure, I guess that.
Right, yeah. However, Jerry and his team are configuring this in such a way that all those things will be addressed. So we have, great protections against cybersecurity issues. For the most part, this new system with DBC will be internal to DASNY. Will not talk to other cloud-based, but there will be some interface outside. So we always spend time on kind of how does that work? What are security protocols? What are the alerts that we're getting? This system itself does not have any money that flows between it. But that's something we always are concerned about as well.
Sure.
So it does increase, just generally speaking, going from manual inputs to a computer-based. But again, they're all manageable, and DBC is truly the industry standard in finance. So they have all their own security systems in place as well.
And a question now for Jenna. Didn't mean to.
Welcome.
Obviously, once this is done, you're going to incorporate this into the internal audit plan. But I assume that won't happen for a year, 2 years.
Yes, I have regular conversations with Kim as to where they are in the implementation. But within all of our audits, as we touch applications that are implemented, we ensure that we incorporate that within the audit, whether it's access, security controls. So we are looking at these applications as they're rolled out.
Terrific. Since you're talking, we did not earlier give you an opportunity to speak generally about the internal audit report that you did yesterday. It's out of sync, but is there anything you want to say about that?
I just reported on our audit plan and the progression that we've made to date. We've completed around 11 engagements. We have 7 that are currently in process, and we have 5 that are not yet started. So we're making good progression. And then I gave a highlight of 2 of our most recently completed engagements since the last audit committee meeting.
And finally, I'm not going to ask you now because it's inappropriate for this meeting. The next audit committee meeting, I am going to ask whether or not you believe you have enough people to get this done. There were several segregation of duties matters that came up yesterday. They were not severe. They were handled. But I guess the question is always whether the internal audit group is big enough. Okay. I'm sorry. We will move on now to. Were you gonna say?
One quick question,
Yeah.
back to the security.
Yeah.
Do we have an external sort of security consultant that does penetration tests or things like that? Do we do that periodically?
We do periodic penetration testing, and we obviously take it serious. I don't want to sound.
Yeah, no, I
rote, yeah, but we do penetration testing internally and externally. And then Jen and her group also pay a lot of attention to this area in their internal audit. So we have kind of belt suspenders.
Yeah, our plan is to switch off with IS will do penetration testing 1 year, and then we internal audit will hire an external audit the 2nd year. So every year we're going to try to cover that.
It's right, like a couple of years ago, there was sort of like penetration, it almost penetrated or might have actually penetrated, but then was stopped or something. And then we did some enhancement. I know we approved something. I'm not exactly sure what we approved, Lisa, but we definitely. Approved
so many of like the
something.
smaller municipalities or agencies that are not part of a larger rubric are the ones that are vulnerable to this.
Look at Suffolk County. They couldn't
Suffolk
report their
County,
elections.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I think the other thing to note is the state recently hired a new head of cybersecurity, and they've sent out several missives over the past couple of months. So they're looking at we're interfacing with the state as well on kind of what they're.
Just moves so quickly. Like
Yeah,
there's always
you
some
can't
bad
keep
guy
ahead-
doing
yeah,
bad stuff.
yeah, you can't keep ahead, but we try to keep ahead of it. So, but yeah, the new state head of cybersecurity is top notch. I think he will be helpful to everybody, not just DASNY, but those. So we're glad to have him on board.
Other questions for Ruben? Jenna? Anybody? You're hearing none. We'll move on to the next report, which is Portia Lee's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The members' materials include the standard public finance reports, just a brief market update. In their continued effort to combat inflation, the Fed raised interest rates again earlier this month by 75 basis points. Total year-to-date volume for 2022 is approximately $346.3 billion, down 15.8% from last year's comparable volume. This week's supply is expected to be lighter than recent averages at about $4.6 billion. Tax-exempt bond yields were lower on Tuesday, with the 10-year decreasing by 4 basis points to close at 3.3%, and the 30-year was unchanged, remaining at 4.06%. U.S. government bond yields were lower, with the 10-year yield decreasing by 8 basis points to 4.14%, and the 30-year Treasury yield decreasing by 6 basis points to 4.28%. Municipal bond funds continue to report outflows last week, as I did previous to that. It's been a trend, throughout the year. Since the October 12th board meeting, 1-year MMD rate has increased by 19 basis points, the 10-year increased by 14 basis points, and the 30-year increased by 32 basis points. During that same period, the 10-year Treasury yield increased by 21 basis points, and the 30-year increased by 38 basis points. So again, as we've been discussing over the last several months, rates continue to rise. I wanted to let the board know that we released an underwriter RFP at the end of October. If you happen to receive any inquiries from the underwriters, if you could please refer them on to our procurement office. We expect to conclude that RFP process by the end of the year. The other thing I just wanted to note for the board is that we have a public finance fellow joining us actually tomorrow, Justin Sproul. And we're very pleased about that. And we will introduce Justin to the board at the December meeting. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look forward to meeting the new fellow. Greg, some substance of your report.
Some substance.
I'm sorry.
behind-
I didn't hear.
I think you moved
Right.
down.
Okay.
Was there a question?
Nope.
Okay.
The standard construction division reports are contained in the board book. Just a couple of highlights. We added 4 capital projects during the reporting period. At Finger Lakes DDSO, we have a $5.3 million resurfacing project. Kingsborough Psych Center, we have a $6 million HVAC upgrade. At St. Lawrence Psych Center, an $8.5 million mechanical systems upgrade, and at Nathan Klein Institute, a $10.5 million upgrade of Building 39. We also completed 2 capital projects during the reporting period, a $5.7 million mechanical upgrade at Baruch College, and at City College, a $12.5 million decommissioning of fuel tanks project. Construction expenditures to date through September this fiscal year, $303 million. Compared to last year, $246 million. So a difference of plus $57 million year over year. A couple of updates on projects in the SUNY system. The UAlbany project is now 14% complete. Abatement and demolition work heading toward completion, making way for the build out of the 2 dorms in the fitness center. At SUNY New Pulse, the $43 million project, abatement and demolition are complete. 4th floor and roof framing are complete. We're trying to dry in the space up top by December. Framing and partition walls and MEP roughing has started. And the GC is actually experiencing some supply chain issues on that project, mostly associated with the electrical equipment, which has been a bear recently. FIT, $198 million project. Is progressing well. Concrete decks are all in place. The atrium skylight framing is complete. The Feldman roof scope is complete. We are now installing the curtain wall on the exterior of the building, the north face. We anticipate enclosure of that space by January of 2023. And Alfred McKenzie Hall, phase 3B and C. The $18 million project are both off and running, trying to finish those up by July of 2023. Work is progressing in the areas of environmental and demolition work, as well as some site work. CUNY, Ruben and I were up to see a couple of the facility senior management folks. We sat down with them, just had a kind of a overarching discussion on things both organizations could do better. We do have some follow-up action items that we're tending to, and we'll probably get back together with them in the not too distant future.
And Steve, one point on that, at CUNY, over the past 2 years, they've had kind of management changes, people interacting with us. So it's good for Steve and I get a chance to sit with new management now. They've had a chance to get their own legs under them, if you will.
Okay.
And just quickly on OMH, an update on a couple of their projects. The Mid-Hudson Forensic Hospital, this is a new $300 million rebuild of their existing campus. We're at 60% design development with that project. The CM and design team are working on reconciling the cost estimate. We plan on bidding that project in December of 2023. Substantial completion scheduled way out there, 2027. Central New York, this is a large renovation project, bid package one, $40 million, buildings 39 and 77. On track for completion of phase one by March of 23, phase 2 and 2A follow under bid package one. And bid package 2 is in design, scheduled to bid in fall of 2023. That bid package is upwards of $80 million. Western New York Psych Center, Children's Psych Center, this is about a $40 million project. Work is ongoing related to the initial phase, asbestos abatement, demolition, and some mechanical scopes are underway. And we're closing in on a baseline schedule for substantial completion. And lastly, up in Albany, the Capital District Psych Center, $15 million phased renovation of 5 units. Unit 1 is underway, advancing well, scheduled to complete in December next month. Phase 2 will follow right on board. Just want to thank the board for approving the Rochester BLA. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Steve. Are there questions for Steve on his report? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the general counsel's report. Nadine, are you there? And are you going to, as I like to say in these meetings, Nadine, everybody else is reporting on the work you're doing. Everybody, this entire book is full of the report you're doing. So if you choose not to give a report, please believe me that we all know that there's a lot for you to report on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did not have, there was an amended agenda, so I didn't have a formal report to provide for this meeting.
Works for me. Thank you. That then is the last agenda item. I have a couple of things I want to say by way of announcement. After the article appeared that Ruben described earlier, some of the members thought it appropriate to do something which I don't believe DASNY has ever done before. And it was a difficult decision to make, because what I'm about to say tends to make it appear that something isn't happening properly. Everything that DASNY is doing, I believe, is being done properly. But we are in a situation we've not been in before. We are, it may be that it's nothing. It may be that the situation that we're in with regard to cannabis does not merit any greater attention than it's getting already from staff. But there are several members who have come to me and have asked the question whether the board actually needs counsel. I'm not suggesting Nadine is not doing a fabulous job, but as we see from this book, her fabulous job is a big job. And I want to make sure that she is not pressed into service and forced not to pay attention to things that she needs to pay attention to. So I went to Paul and to Ruben and I asked whether or not we might secure separate board counsel. They very willingly agreed. We are in the process now of trying to figure out whether separate board counsel will be from the list, the procurement list that DASNY already has, or whether or not we would go outside that list. That decision will be made very, very quickly. And with a little luck, we can actually send some project work to a firm that will only work for the board. Are there any questions about any of that? All right. Hearing none, the next regular meeting is on December 7th. Always worry about.
Al,
meetings
Al?
on December 7th. Yes.
It's Paul. Just one last thing. Caroline has been listening in. She wanted to thank you for the comments. Unfortunately, she's home with a sick baby today, but appreciates your comments. Just wanted to let you know that, but could not make the meeting today.
Well, you're very kind, Paul. What I regret most, though, is that I will not likely see her again before she leaves the job. It would be great if we could all get together in one place. Congratulate Caroline on a job well done. It's not going to happen that way, but anybody, I'm sure, who wants to send her an email just to say thank you, should do that. Just go do it. Paul, thanks. The next meeting, December 7th, as I just said, I always worry about meetings on December 7th.
New York City, right? I mean, general.
Yes, it's in New York City. Thank you. Well, all three.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah,
Right.
going forward, we'll do the same format.
Right, yeah. Like the main,
Yeah, the
main
main.
is here, but you can be in Buffalo or.
Is there any other business to come before this board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn? Thank you, Beryl. Jerry, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
I assume no one is opposed and nobody will abstain. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you. Thank you, staff.